Something is unfolding beneath the quiet surface. And if you have been sensing it lately, it is not your imagination at all. A final, weighty decision is slowly forming in their heart. And in some strange way, your presence is written right into it. On the outside, they may appear calm, distant, or emotionally detached. But a truth they once pushed away has become too heavy to ignore now. This is not only about missing you, it is about what your connection awakened inside them and forced them to face within themselves. If you are feeling this shift taking place right now, hit like and let me know you are here. They are standing at a major turning point, and every direction they consider somehow loops back to you again and again. For a long time, they tried to distract themselves through routine noise, work pressure, personal pride, and emotional distance, believing that silence would eventually weaken what they feel. But some connections do not fade away like that. The more they tried to suppress it, the more their inner world treated it as something unfinished and deeply meaningful. Now they are looking back and questioning the story they once told themselves for so long without hesitation. Comment shifting. If you have been sensing this deep inner change within them, one part of them feels pulled toward you with an undeniable force, while another part resists because accepting this truth requires raw honesty and the release of old emotional defenses that once made them feel safe. They are finally sitting with the reality of why your memory keeps returning in their quiet moments, and why no one else seems to replace what you represented. This is that heavy space just before clarity arrives, where the mind can only resist for so long before the inner mask begins to fall apart. If they return, it will be because they finally recognized that a connection like yours does not happen twice in a lifetime. And if they choose to walk away, it will never mean you were not enough in any way. Type yes if you want me to reveal what their silence really means, and whether fear or truth is stronger here. It will simply mean they were not ready for the level of honesty and inner transformation that loving you required from them at this stage of their life. That is why your role now is not to chase them, not to force outcomes, and not to try to control what happens next in this situation. Let truth unfold naturally in its own timing. Let time reveal what words could never fully express before. What is happening inside them carries real depth and emotional weight. It is not a passing doubt that fades quickly. It is a full internal conflict that continues to grow stronger with time. On one side, there is an emotional pull toward you, filled with memories, warmth, longing, and a deep sense of belonging that feels rare and meaningful. On the other side, there is an old protective voice shaped by past pain, disappointment, and the fear of being hurt again. That voice tells them to stay guarded, to remain distant, and to protect themselves at all costs. These two forces are now colliding within them, and the pressure is becoming harder to ignore as each day passes. They may try to hide inside daily routines and distractions. They may keep themselves busy with multiple things at once. They may act as if none of this matters anymore. But the more they push it down, the more it rises back to the surface. Because the real struggle was never outside of them, it has always been within their own heart and mind. And that is why the next step holds so much importance for their future path. You became a turning point in their life, without either of you fully realizing it at first. Even if it was not understood in the beginning, something about this connection challenged the walls they built over time, just to survive emotionally. It reached the version of them that existed beneath control, beneath appearances, and beneath all the careful patterns they learned to protect themselves with over the years. Now they are facing a difficult choice that cannot be avoided forever. They can remain within the limits of who they have always been, or they can step into a completely unfamiliar version of themselves. That new version requires courage, emotional openness, softness, and risk that feels uncomfortable and new to them. This inner conflict is exhausting them from within. It shows itself in the inconsistency you may have been feeling, the push and pull, the shifts between closeness and distance, the moments where they seem ready to move forward, followed by sudden withdrawal again. This is not always manipulation or games. Sometimes it is what happens when someone deeply desires a connection, but is afraid of the transformation that comes with it. As this pressure grows inside them, it begins to break down old illusions they once held firmly. They can no longer convince themselves that you were just a temporary or passing presence in their life. They are being pushed to see you more clearly than before, and even more importantly, to see themselves in a new light as well. Old memories return with stronger impact. Shared emotions resurface with deeper intensity than before. Comment crossroads if you feel they are standing at a major turning point connected to you. Every silence now carries more meaning. Every absence feels heavier on their emotional state. This discomfort is necessary because real decisions are never formed through avoidance. They are formed when confusion begins to clear and the heart can no longer stay buried under fear and doubt. That clearing is happening now, even if everything still appears quiet on the surface. There comes a point where uncertainty becomes too heavy to carry, and they are slowly reaching that point. Not because the outside world has changed dramatically, but because the mind cannot stay divided forever. For too long they tried to minimize what they feel, convincing themselves it was not that important, or that it would simply pass. But deep inside, something now tells them that is no longer true. That awareness is what is bringing everything upward into their conscious mind with increasing force. Emotions this deep do not disappear. They do not stay still. They expand in silence and continue evolving even in absence. They wait until the person can no longer deny what is already within them. Now those emotions are returning in waves, late at night, in quiet pauses during the day, in unexpected memories they never planned to revisit, and in the stillness after busy moments. They are beginning to notice how often their thoughts drift back to you without effort. How your presence still feels like a quiet background feeling in their daily life. How distractions fail to fully erase the sense that something meaningful is missing. Your absence has played a powerful role in this process. By stepping back, you left them alone with their own thoughts, and that silence became a mirror. It forced them to face what was missing, the comfort, the emotional spark, and the sense of safety your presence once gave them. When they finally felt the shape of that absence, they stopped asking whether it mattered and started comparing your depth to everything else that feels empty in comparison. If you know you are not imagining this connection, share this message with someone who needs to hear it as well. Inside them, fear and desire have now collided with full intensity. On one side, there is a warm and natural pull toward you. On the other side, there is a strong protective fear of losing control and reopening old emotional wounds. Yet for the first time, desire is beginning to speak louder than fear, creating a strong inner storm of push and pull. They remain stuck in hesitation, not because they do not care, but because they are going through a quiet internal breaking point. This is no longer just about a connection. It is becoming a defining moment of identity, about who they are becoming next in their life. While they may appear distant or unsettled on the surface, do not mistake this for an ending. They are realizing that staying in this in-between state, neither fully present nor fully gone, has been draining their peace. They are now being pushed to take responsibility for their emotions, even if it means stepping out of the comfort of their old identity and toward a connection that requires growth. Comment pull if you can feel them being drawn back to you, even in silence. The hesitation that once felt like protection is now becoming a form of inner confinement. The walls they depended on are beginning to crack under the weight of what can no longer be denied. They are remembering moments where they stayed silent when they wanted to speak, and where pride replaced honesty. The gap between what they feel and what they express is closing slowly but surely, making change not just possible, but necessary. When a person is left alone with their thoughts long enough, truth naturally rises above everything else. That is exactly what is happening within them now. This is not coming from outside influence. It is an internal shift, growing stronger each day. They can no longer hide behind uncertainty the way they once did. Type awakening if this message reflects what they are going through. This connection has become too present in their quietest moments. It appears when everything slows down. It returns when they try to focus elsewhere. And each return is reshaping how they interpret your connection over time. What once looked like coincidence now feels like a pattern with meaning. What once felt confusing now feels deeper and more significant. They are beginning to realize they were not only missing a person, but also missing a version of themselves that felt more open, more honest, and more emotionally alive around you. And the discomfort of being disconnected from that version of themselves has become too strong to ignore any longer. This is a major turning point in their inner journey, so understand this clearly without doubt. When someone begins to miss who they became while being with you, the question is no longer whether the connection mattered at all. The question becomes whether they are willing to return to the truth it awakened inside them. As this awareness grows deeper, the outer world slowly starts to lose some of its ability to fully distract them. They can remain busy with many activities, surround themselves with people, or throw themselves into work, goals, plans, and constant noise. But beneath all that movement, there is still one quiet current pulling them back to the same place, to you, to what was felt, and to what still feels unfinished between you. And even when they try to ignore it, it does not disappear. It simply waits underneath everything else they do. This is the stage where the protective ego starts to lose its strong grip gradually. The ego wants distance, control, and emotional safety at any cost. But the deeper part of them is beginning to understand that complete disconnection carries its own kind of pain, silence, and inner emptiness. And sometimes that emptiness becomes heavier than the fear of closeness, honesty, and emotional vulnerability. So now they are standing between two possible futures. The safe life they already know, with its emotional distance and quiet emptiness, or the unknown path that carries risk, but also carries the possibility of something real, meaningful, and emotionally alive. For the first time, the unknown does not feel only frightening. It also starts to feel meaningful, and slowly, the possibility of something real begins to feel more valuable than the protection they once held onto so tightly. This is where courage begins to form inside a person. Not when fear disappears completely, but when truth becomes more important than fear itself, even if fear is still present in the background. And with that shift, a quiet stillness begins to settle into their inner world. The pressure is still there, but it feels different now, more steady, more honest, more aware. They are no longer resisting every feeling that rises inside them. Instead, they are beginning to allow those feelings to speak without immediately pushing them away. They are starting to accept that what they feel is real, even if they do not fully understand it yet. And that acceptance brings a quiet softness to their heart. Not because everything is resolved, but because the inner conflict is slowly turning into inner clarity and direction. Confusion is not gone, but it is no longer completely in control. They are standing at the edge of an old version of themselves, looking toward a new possibility that feels uncertain, but also more honest. And the only bridge between these two versions of life is a single honest choice they must eventually face within themselves. This is the moment of self-reflection and emotional transparency. The silence that once protected them is now reflecting them back to themselves without distortion. It is showing them where pride blocked love, where fear blocked truth, and where avoidance created distance that never truly needed to exist in the first place. They are revisiting conversations, memories, glances, and pauses from the past. But now they are doing it with more emotional maturity, more awareness, and more inner depth than before. What once felt confusing now starts to look clearer when seen through this new perspective. They can see where fear made decisions in the past. They can also see the natural value of what was trying to grow between you without force. This is not only about regret or looking backward, It is about reorganizing what actually matters in their inner world and emotional priorities. The things they once placed above connection, like image, control, emotional safety, and self-protection, are starting to feel less meaningful compared to the depth of something genuine and real. What once felt important on the surface now feels empty when compared to emotional truth, and something else is shifting inside their heart as well. Empathy is slowly growing within them. They are beginning to feel what their distance might have felt like from your side. They are starting to understand the emotional weight, silence, and uncertainty you may have carried while they remain distant or confused. That understanding softens a person from the inside. It humbles them quietly. It makes it harder to stay behind emotional walls without questioning themselves. Because once awareness and responsibility enter, everything starts to change in deeper ways. They are no longer reacting only from fear. They are beginning to observe themselves more honestly. They are slowly becoming aware of what their actions, or lack of actions, actually mean. And when someone reaches this stage, everything becomes more serious internally, even if nothing is shown outwardly. Because now they understand that whatever happens next will reveal something real about who they are becoming. The final layers of hesitation are beginning to dissolve. The old patterns of should I and could I are losing strength. In their place, something more grounded is forming. There is a growing sense of urgency inside them, a feeling that they must acknowledge what is real. They must face the consequences of what they feel. They must stop delaying emotional truth through avoidance or distraction. Time itself starts to feel different now, more limited, more meaningful, less endless than before. They are realizing that staying stuck is also a decision, and often the most painful one over time. This clarity is not only mental, it is also physical. It shows up as pressure in the chest, in quiet moments, when they think about speaking honestly, reaching out, or finally doing something real. The unknown still scares them, yes, but the familiar emptiness of staying disconnected is starting to feel even more uncomfortable. And that shift is important, because when emptiness becomes louder than fear, movement begins to get closer. Words that were once held back are slowly rising toward the surface. Actions that once felt impossible are becoming harder to keep buried. Because once truth grows strong enough inside a person, silence stops feeling safe. It starts feeling heavy, uncomfortable, and difficult to maintain. You need to remember this clearly. Whatever they do next will not come from a random impulse or sudden emotion. It will come from a long internal process of self-confrontation, reflection, and emotional honesty. A process where they can no longer avoid what they already know deep down. That is why this moment carries so much weight in their life. It is not a temporary feeling that fades quickly. It is something deeper. A turning point that slowly reshapes how they see themselves and what they choose moving forward. At the center of everything is one simple truth. You changed something within them in a lasting way. You reflected a part of their emotional depth back to them. You became a mirror, a trigger for awareness, and a steady presence in a time when they felt uncertain within themselves. Even in silence, your impact did not disappear. It stayed present within their awareness. That is why they are now reaching a deeper level of understanding than before. The mental noise is slowly fading. The emotional path is becoming clearer with time. The question is no longer whether this affected them deeply, but when they will act on what they now clearly recognize inside themselves. Layer by layer, confusion is falling away and revealing something quieter, steadier, and more grounded within them. They are beginning to understand that trying to control their feelings only made those feelings stronger, and pretending not to know the truth is no longer working the way it once did. If you have been sensing this shift, trust that feeling more deeply. Something very real is reaching a critical stage inside them, pushing them toward a decision between fear and truth, between avoidance and honesty, between staying the same or finally stepping into emotional clarity. Your role in this moment is simple. Stay centered, stay calm. Do not chase what is already being revealed naturally through time and awareness. Let the silence do its work. Let distance show its meaning. Let clarity form without interference. The person who once hesitated is approaching a point where going back and forth will no longer feel possible. If this message connected with you, reflect on what part stood out most, and hold steady as this process unfolds, because inner conflict is slowly transforming into clarity, and clarity always leads to a decision sooner or later.